Hey, welcome to Leadership Within, the moment for leaders to find their own space of hopefully serenity and leadership. I'm your host, TK, and as always, I'm joined by
Vanessa.
Hey, Vanessa. We've just encountered some technical difficulties, and it's an interesting thing when it comes to recording podcasts and leadership, how to behave. So how's your week going?
My week is going okay. It's quite sticky. So I know weather-wise, not work-wise. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting for me that, there's definitely some stickiness too, and work-wise too, or client-wise. That being said, I think it's a great topic for a conversation because it actually so happens that one of my clients shared a challenge with me that, I would love to discuss. And as we're not naming clients, I think it's, okay to do so. So the thing is, as leaders, we often are line managers of people, or we rely quite a bit on our team. You can't do everything yourself as a leader, neither you should. And sometimes what happens is the person that's answering, reporting to you, can be very valuable for your success, for the success of the organization. But sometimes what happens is, they obviously can be quite aware of this, and the old balance of power flips. Usually what happens is we're used to things like the leaders being in charge. But what if the actual employee or team member is in charge because they have a firm grip on knowledge, value, and they know their own value? Isn't it getting uncomfortable for the leader?
Can I ask you what it means to be in charge?
Well, as always, that's an interesting question. So, in charge means in control, right? Quite often, and traditionally, we would think that leaders are the people making the decisions. Leaders are the people that make things happen because they will it. Leaders are the people that, either can stop something or enable something. And they have the power, the authority, the modus operandi to get it done. But what if they can't? What if the actual person holding their own priorities, their own, even their own salary, dare I say, I'm not saying writing your own paycheck, but stuff like this, is actually the employee, the people not traditionally in charge.
So what you're basically saying is it inverts the power dynamic.
Oh yeah, it does, right? And it's a situation that does happen. And I don't know if you've seen it happen.
Well, I suppose not specifically, but I suppose, in any situation, you kind of want people working for you that are brilliant and brilliant in their field.
Yes.
I think so, don't you?
Well, of course. But on the other hand, it makes some leaders uncomfortable that they don't feel in charge.
Yeah, and I think that's a great opportunity for that leader to look at what's showing up here. Like, why am I feeling so uncomfortable? And it's, you're saying it's about control. So, if I suppose maybe I'm being a bit facetious, but I kind of think, I thought we were moving away from this kind of style of leadership a little bit. I was kind of hoping that we were.
Yeah, if that is true, that's fine. In many organizations, I'm working with, we're trying our best. But the thing is, many leaders that I work with, and I'm guessing similar for you, have been raised in a certain mentality that it's expected for them to be in charge, even if they're doing their best, not to exercise their power. Just having it around feels safe, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I think that's one aspect to it. So I've grown up with a model that says, be in charge, be the top dog, and then that's success. But I think nowadays what we want is cooperation rather than competition. I was in a meeting this week, and one of the senior leaders talked about internal battling. And it was kind of like, oh God, isn't that interesting? Like how much internal battling goes on. Like, and someone else said to me today about politics, and they said, these are public servants, people that we pay to serve us. And look how many leaders we've had over the last 7 years. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we can't get our shit together. And it's like, okay, so there's something, I suppose, in the repeated nature of this coming up that, that the one person that has charge and then or needs to be in charge. I just think the model is so outdated.
Well, I get it. So let's step away from this in charge. And let's maybe replace it with control. And what I mean by control is being able to feel like you have a grip on the situation. So in a typical way, if you look at, very hierarchical command and control organizations, it just feels like there's a ladder of control, and the leader in, the social relationship of work is in control. So they can feel safe because they own the situation, right? They are able to some degree, even though they want to exercise it and they're benevolent, control their employees. Now, in this case, the inversion is such that they have very little means of control. And for many leaders that are not accustomed to being comfortable with the lack of control, it creates a lot of fear. So it has consequences, right?
Yeah, it does. And I think, who wants to be controlled? No
one does. But imagine a situation, right, which is something that didn't happen recently, but I've had a client that told me this story, that, they both changed. So there was a, organizational design structure change in the organization. And what happened is they both joined in a similar relationship, right? The boss was still the boss, the employee was still an employee, however you want to call it. They transitioned to a new department, and suddenly the employee basically scheduled skip one-to-ones with their common boss. And the leader themselves, they were quite anxious about this. What's going on, right? You could definitely attribute it to a trust issue. But on the other hand, some organizations are a dog-eat-dog world. And the challenge is people are constantly looking over their backs.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about fear, aren't you? And I think and insecurity. And I think, because when you say control, I'm thinking, okay, what are you trying to control? Because you talked about resources, power, the outcome or whatever, but you're never going to really control another human being.
No, you can't, right? But in what we do, and, depending on how our listeners think about it, the social construct of work or a client-vendor relationship, client-consultant, is such that once we enter into this agreement, many people believe that as an employee, you're supposed to, comply with the wishes, or dare I say, orders of your boss. And as such, we grant control to the people that we report to. Now, to a certain degree, of course, you can always quit. You can always put up boundaries, as one should, but, there is still a degree of given control.
Yeah. And so I'm a bit like, okay, so
yes. And so when actually you enter a work relationship, and what it turns out is that you are actually in control as an employee. Because your skills, your value, your ability is so overwhelming, I'm not saying overwhelming, but so valuable that actually a lot of the value of the leader themselves is dependent on you. And such the situation flips.
Yeah, okay. I noticed that when you were talking, in my background, there was a rifle going off. Someone's shooting rabbits.
So that was it. Yeah.
It's just like as you said that, and it's like, okay, so what are we shooting dead? What are we kind of trying to blow out of the water here? What are we trying to, like shift the paradigm on, like how, because I get it. I get what you're saying. Like, oh, okay, the leader feels insecure, out of control. They feel like their employees got the control and they don't know what to do about it.
Mm-hmm.
But, the only thing that I can think in those situations is to say, okay, so what can I learn in this situation? What's showing up for me that is making me so uncomfortable, and how can I do that, work with that, because it's an edge for me, for others to have control, for me to give power away.
Okay, no, you're absolutely right. Right, I guess maybe the most mature and productive way of dealing with it is to deal with yourself, to deal with your own edge, to understand it, and see through it, or maybe embrace it, or do whatever needs happening for you. But many leaders would feel a strong urge to act beyond just themselves, to talk to the employee, to do something. It's just this insecurity can drive people towards action.
Yeah, but I suppose then I go, you're trying to control something that's not controllable. Do you know what I mean? Because the person's got a gift and an expertise, and is it that person's issue, or is it yours? And I get it. There's loads of scenarios, isn't there, where you feel really insecure and you think, I need that person to stop doing that, to stop going and having skip level conversations. But it's like, why? Because I don't feel good about that, because I'm scared that they might say something about me. And so then I just think any attempt to make it about somebody else is going to backfire.
It's quite a valuable point of view, right? So what you're saying is there's nothing that can be done outside of yourself and your own edge. The problem and the solution is completely within the leader.
Well, I think you can do things about it. You can, try and remove you can do lots of things around it.
And it will backfire, as you said.
Yeah, we've probably all seen it where a compromise agreement happens because there's we can't get on or whatever it is, but actually, how's that going to help you? And I just think these moments are the moments where you get to go, okay, I need to look in the mirror a little bit. What is this triggering in me? And I mean, okay, look, I'm not in a position that you're describing, but I can say, certainly as someone going in to teams or, organizations and having conversations with them, this thing of control can come up a lot. I can feel like the expectation on me to suddenly get a wand and make things better or different is huge. And yet I don't have, if I go in like that, in a consultancy mindset and let me tell you what you need to do, it's not going to empower them. Because I've taken the power from them and I'm coming in as the expertise. And I think so much of my training is really work with your own insecurities, Vanessa, to notice, like I noticed when, I had it literally this week where someone, I say, oh, that sounds really, really tactical. And they go, no, it's not. And I think, ooh, okay, got that wrong then, but it's like, no, in my world, that's how I see what's happening, and it's like, I feel so often, how can I stay in relationship and conversation and, kind of realize that actually, I want other people to have brilliance and expertise because otherwise they're dependent on me. And what do I know?
No, I can completely agree with that. But there's a very important statement that you made, and let me make my point.
Just the one?
No. I'm sure. Come on, Vanessa. Oh my God, you're feisty today. Well, the thing is, you are on a roll. All right. So the thing is, okay. So let's imagine our listeners after hearing your, I think, very important statement, which was like, well, whatever you might do beyond, your own soul searching, like looking, so the internal self work, whatever action you take with the employee himself or herself, will backfire. Now, some might challenge that. Some might think, well, I'm supposed to do nothing, just like, soul search and find my own way about it, to like embrace my insecurity. There has to be something that I can do. And yet you say that, it's a very high chance, or even certainty, as you said, that it will backfire. How do you know that?
I don't. But I think, I don't have the solutions here, but I suppose what I'm saying is, I think if I go into a conversation and I am trying to willfully change someone to play themselves down and have them shrink or back off because I'm insecure, and that doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't, like I'm trying to squash someone, essentially.
Well, if that's the action, but the question is if there is another thing that a leader in this situation can do. Let me challenge that a bit, because how about this scenario? They admit it to the employee. They open up and talk about their insecurity.
Yeah.
Well, of course.
Yeah. How many people do you know are willing to do that?
A precious few.
Yeah.
And I haven't ever seen someone doing it. I'm just expecting some people to have the strength to be able to do that. But again, I'm rotating your own line of thought on its head and saying, well, if we are supposed to confront our own insecurity, isn't that a logical conclusion?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe it's how it's done. Maybe, me saying
some space opera or something. Oh, that's so.
But
no, I love how you said it. Yeah.
What I mean by that is maybe it's saying, I'm struggling with our relationship. Like I don't know. I suppose it's like, what is the outcome you're trying to have here? And if it's to put someone back in a box, you're either going to direct them and put them back in a box, and there may be a fair reason to do that. But if it's only because the person's really good and you don't know, like what they outthink you, then to me that requires some self-reflection.
Well, that's true, right? But if and I'm not laboring the point here. Well, no, it's not that I want to move you, but I'm just wondering, like, if our listeners are now listening to our wonderful conversation and our different points of view, well, maybe the exploration of what might be a possible course of action, I would say that, that there's a relief of sharing it or venting your insecurity to the subject of your insecurity, and hopefully productively, right? Not saying, oh, you this and that, why are you so skilled and valuable? It's just saying, wow, you're incredibly skilled and valuable, and I love that you are, to be honest, to the point that I have to admit it makes me a bit insecure. There's nothing you can do about it, but I just want to share it with you.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't you think that leaders might feel relieved
of that? Yeah, maybe, but I'm not.
What stops a great leader from doing that? And I can't believe that you don't think there are great leaders in this world.
I think they do. I think great leaders will recognize other people's talents. I think what they don't do is say, "And I'm feeling really insecure about that."
Even if they are.
Well, maybe they'd say, I don't know. I don't know, if I'm honest.
Oh no, it's not that I necessarily would feel myself doing it, right? And I don't know if, to be honest, I'm just asking myself, and maybe our listeners are reflecting with us. There's two questions here. One is this something productive? Is this going to help them in any way? And the second one is, if I'm able to do it. The second question is not something I can answer for myself even. But the first question is interesting. If it all is going to help, how would we, being on the receiving end of it, being the employees actually being so valuable, feel if we've heard that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's how, I work with someone who has recently started to say things like, I really, I want to know what you did in that scenario because I'd love to learn, from you. And this is someone that's senior to me, and I'm like, wow, okay, that's really like surprising because it flips it on its head that they should be the font of all knowledge. And I'm used to them showing up in a way that is, I'm really experienced in this. So
it sounds quite positive, like it has a positive
impact
on you.
It's a really
right?
positive effect because what it does is it says, oh wow, there might be another way to skin this cat, and I see that you're doing something here that it might be helpful for me. So like what they're saying is they're open to influence, they're open to exploration, but also they're giving you a certain level of power to do it in your way. I think this whole thing about power for me is probably a little bit sensitive at the moment because I think I've often been in situations where I've been told that I have power, but then when I've taken it, I've had a slap wrist or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, not like that. Yeah. Don't make me look bad, or like, oh yeah, you can trust your intuition and go where you want to, but not this. But only if it works.
Yeah, there's a certain limit, right? There's a secret squirrel club that you might not have been invited to.
Yeah, and what I'm starting to realize with myself is that because I was recently told, like, don't give your authority away, and I thought, okay, what does that actually mean in a conversation here? How would I give my authority away? And because if I'm listening to someone and I'm asking a question, am I giving away my authority or am I listening? And what I started to see was that where I will kind of lose my authority sometimes is when I feel that I don't, like I don't necessarily have the answer. I'm not 100% clear yet. And so it's easy. If someone comes in really dominant, it's really easy for me to kind of just fade and let them take the reins. And if I took it back to your scenario, sometimes I will have the expertise and I've still let other people do that. But I know that then gets me in a really disempowered place. So what I'm trying to do is, and the other one is, this has come up really recently where people are incredibly logical and analytical. And let's face it, I think I'm pretty analytical. I think I do logic, but my natural way of orientating is going to be more towards the sensing, feeling, intuiting side.
It's a gift, yeah.
And what I've found is that for so long that, when someone was like utterly logical and there was to the point that they're almost cold, they give you like 2 words, it's this, and it is the way. Whilst they might win the argument, they don't actually, because the engage, do you know what I mean? It's like,
I do.
Well, fuck you, right?
That's a purist victory. No, absolutely right. And it's, oh man, it's so hard to unpack, to be honest. It's like, the more you get into it, the more, as our show is titled, we're getting within the human side of leadership. And there is no single good answer, right? Even though one could say, be brave and share your insecurity, right? It will dissipate, or whatever you want to say. There is maybe no one way to skin the cat.
Exactly. And I kind of think sometimes that way might look like, do you know what? I'm going to forgive myself. I'm feeling really insecure. I'm going to let go.
Well, I hope that, you or our listeners are in the state of mind and shape that allows them to do so, because this itself requires a lot of, oh
my goodness,
forgiveness requires energy and courage. Well, it's been a great conversation, Vanessa. So what's the one sentence you're taking away from it?
I think probably control the controllables. And humans aren't necessarily the controllables that you want to be controlling.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's like, there is no right answer. So, suck it up and whatever is your answer, just do it, right? Whatever forgive yourself for not knowing the right answer. It feels like you want to share and you feel brave, do it. If not, well, just, it will never be any better unless you forgive yourself and accept this. So, with that, thank you so much, Vanessa, for the lovely conversation, and our listeners for listening in. We'll be back in 2 weeks for the next episode of Leadership Within.